Hello and welcome to another Spectrum Geeks video. My name is Dale, and in this video we're going to sit down and have a little look at the new Octopus Energy tariff called Octopus Flux. So thanks for tuning in to this video, and again apologies for a little bit of the mess. Still trying to work on decorating the study here in the new house, but I wanted to talk about this Octopus Flux tariff. So a few subscribers have mentioned this to me, and a couple of people reached out to me on Facebook in terms of what do I think of this new Octopus Flux tariff. Is it something I'm going to be moving to, and is it something that they should consider? So I thought if you weren't aware of this tariff, I'd bring it to your attention. So obviously this is with Octopus Energy, who I've been with for many years and constantly talk about the Octopus Go tariff. But this Flux tariff is really one of the first tariffs I've seen that's specifically focused at homeowners that have both solar and battery storage, and essentially how you can hopefully maximize the benefits of having solar and battery storage and the costs of electricity, and how you can kind of buy and sell from the grid at hopefully good rates to make the return on investment even more valuable to you, especially with energy crisis. I mean, it is an energy crisis, but the energy prices continuing to go up. My Octopus Go tariff comes to an end next month, and again the price is going up again. So it was originally 5 pence off peak, then it was 7.5 pence off peak. Now it's going up to 12 pence, I think it is, or 12.5 or 15. I can't remember. But yeah, prices are going up. The off-peak cost is now what the peak cost used to be, pretty much, when I first joined Octopus Go. So if you have options, then this Octopus Flux tariff might be a goer. So let's pop over and look on the screen together, talk to you a little bit about what the tariff is all about and whether I think it's something that you should consider if you have solar and battery. And the reason why I say that is one of the requirements is that you do have solar and battery storage. Well, at least solar for sure. You have to be able to send your certificate across, so it can't be just be solar that you've installed yourself. You must have the certificate to prove that it's MCS, isn't it? MCS certificate that you issue over to Octopus, so they know you've got a legit system and you've been authorized by your local DNO to be able to potentially export energy back to the grid. So let's pop on the screen and look at this Octopus Flux tariff together. Okay, so this is it. I put a link in the description so you can get to this yourself, but basically it's octopus.energy/smart/flux. And here you can see, as usual, nice little graphic here to welcome us to the Octopus Flux page. And as I mentioned in the intro, the whole idea of this is that if you have solar and battery, you can charge the battery up at some good off-peak costs. But the main focus of this tariff is really that you have the ability to export your energy at better rates than we're currently seeing with like the SEG rates, which tend to be like 5 pence per kilowatt when you're exporting them. So as you can see here, Octopus Flux is an import and export tariff optimized to give you the best rates for consuming and selling your energy and support the grid during peak. So you can see here that you've got what they're calling their super cheap rates, which are for 3 hours, so between 2 and 5. Now that's different to the Octopus Go tariff that I'm on at the moment, where I have super cheap rates from midnight to 4:30, so you're having 4 hours, whereas here we have 3 hours, but a different time. So that's probably when you're going to charge your car, charge your batteries and what have you. And then there is a peak rate, which is between 4 o'clock and that's 7 o'clock, isn't it? Terrible with the 24-hour clock. But that's obviously when most people are coming home from work, you're cooking your dinner, got your oven on, got your cooker on, and you're consuming lots of energy. So obviously that's when you want to be using your battery. And if you've got lots of battery storage, you might decide to sell that back to the grid during that time. So if you want to, you can put your postcode in here and you can see what the rates are, because obviously rates vary a little bit based on your geographical location. But let me just bring up what my rates are, and then I can give you just a rough example of what that would look like. So Let's have this posted in the Spectrum Geeks Discord channel from earlier. Okay, so here we can see that what my rates would be is, so the day rate, so in between 5 AM and 4 PM, I'd be paying 34 pence per kilowatt hour in terms of importing it. But anything I exported during the day, I'd get 22 kilowatts. So that's much better than, like, as I mentioned before, the typical 5 pence that you get if you're on a valid tariff on the SEG. Then the flux rate, which is at what they're calling their super cheap rate, where you're importing in the early hours of the morning, is actually relatively high. So 20.4 pence per kilowatt hour. So obviously less than your day rate, but that is more than the rate you're paying on the go tariff. But if you do any exporting in those early hours of the morning, which is probably going to be from your battery because you're not going to be generating much solar at that time of the morning, you get paid that 9.4 pence per kilowatt hour. And then the peak rate, where you're going to then have to pay 47.5 pence per kilowatt hour to import, which is pretty much the current kind of normal day rate on the Octopus Go, which we're moving to. But you will get paid 36.5 pence per kilowatt hour for anything you export back to the grid. So this is where I think during the summer months you might have a little bit of solar surplus that you can sell back. But if you filled up your battery all day and you don't need the battery to get you through all of the night, you might choose to export some of your battery back to the grid and get paid 36.5 pence. And then when you import it again overnight, you could pay just the 20.4 pence per kilowatt hour. And as in most of these tariffs, obviously there's a standing charge, which is 45 pence per day. So that gives you an example of what it would be like for me if I went on to this tariff. Now, a little bit more information about what's the requirements. So again, you have to have solar panels to be able to get onto this tariff. And as mentioned before, you need to have your MCS certificate. So if you've got solar panels already and it was installed by an MCS certified installer, you will have that MCS document. If you don't, then you're not going to be eligible for this tariff. If you don't have solar right now, as you can see here, Octopus are partnering with various different companies for heat pumps and solars and batteries and what have you. So you can reach out to someone to start getting things installed. And as I say here, you don't have to have your install by Octopus. You can have it from anybody, and that will work really fine. So again, in terms of what you need, so let's say you have got solar and your MCS certificate and ideally a battery, then you obviously have to be an Octopus Energy customer. So first of all, you can sign up, use the link in the description, and you will get £50 credit towards your first bill, as will I. And then once you get an Octopus Energy customer, then you can sign up to move over to this tariff in the future. You just kind of join on a standard tariff. You do have to have a smart meter. So either a SMETS 2 meter, which in a more modern building, you'll tend to have that as standard if your house is built kind of after, say, 2018, something like that. Or you have to have a valid, secure SMETS 1 smart meter. So secure is the brand of the SMETS 1 smart meter. So you need to have smart meters for this to work. And obviously, that's how Octopus are able to find out how much you're importing and exporting back to get the right payments, everything done. Obviously, then you sign up to the terms and conditions as you would, and then you can get put onto this tariff and start hopefully reducing your energy bills and making a bit of money if you have the ability to export out to them. So, as mentioned before, you can get an estimate in terms of installing solar at your property. So again, if you're interested in solar and you haven't done it already yet, and you haven't decided who you're going to reach out to, Octopus Energy do have the option to provide that for you. So that's basically what the tariff is all about. One of the things that's required, again, is the solar panels. You don't have to have an electric vehicle. So that's one of the restraints currently for Octopus Go, is you have to have an EV. So this tariff here is kind of filling in some of that gap where people don't necessarily have an EV, but they have solar panels, and perhaps they have a battery storage, but they haven't been able to get an Octopus Go since they changed the rules. So now Octopus Flux might be an option. And obviously, if you have the feed-in tariff, so if you have the older solar where you benefit from the feed-in tariff, there may be some issues in terms of how you're getting paid. But if you're currently on SEG, you won't have an issue. You can just move over to Octopus Flux without any issue. So I don't think there's any limits on what you can export. No, there's no limits. So however much you can pump back into the grid from either your battery storage and your solar, you can benefit from it. That shouldn't be a problem. So let's jump back and I'll tell you what I think of this tariff and who it might be good for or who it may not be good for. Okay, so as those of you who subscribe to the channel know, I recently moved, so I don't currently have solar on this property at the moment, whereas I had my 9 kilowatt solar array before, but I did bring my battery with me. So I'm not currently eligible for this tariff, but let's pretend that I was still at my previous setup. So where I had the 9 kilowatt solar array, I had my Tesla Powerwall 2 battery storage, and I was on the feed-in tariff. And obviously my primary goal was that I didn't export anything as much as possible. So I would put all of my surplus energy into recharging my battery, heating my hot water with my Energy Eddy, and charging out EVs with the Zappy. So what I basically did, I had a little look at my previous year's stats for the last year. And even if you do use as much solar as you can into your different devices during the summer, if you've got a reasonable solar array, you are going to generate a surplus more than you can use, and you'd put back into the grid. So, and also that's happening during the day rate with the Octopus Flux. So for me, we'll forget about the feed-in tariff and all that sort of stuff. We'll come back to that in a moment. But if I was using the energy that I generated like I had done previously, still on the Octopus Go tariff, so charging the battery up in the winter on the off-peak when I didn't need it, and obviously same charging cars off-peak as well, then my total export for the previous year was 895.8 kilowatt hours of energy that I put back into the grid that I couldn't use in my EV charging, heating hot water, and charging up my Powerwall again. And so if I was on this tariff last year, my total pay from the export would have been £213 and 74 pence, something like that. That's how much I would have been paid for all of the energy that I exported out if I was on the Octopus Flux tariff. And I personally wouldn't have exported anything from my Powerwall because I like to use my Powerwall power when the sun goes down, so I wouldn't have had any surplus that I could have sold back out of my battery, and that wouldn't be something that I would have considered. Now, even though obviously £214 is pretty good, I wouldn't have done this because, let me just check my numbers, because I was on the feed-in tariff. So what that meant was I obviously get paid for generation, which doesn't change if you're on the Flux tariff, but I get paid for deemed export with the feed-in tariff. So what I would have got instead was £220. So I'm slightly better off staying on the feed-in tariff and not giving up my kind of deemed export piece, which you'd have to do if you went with Flux. So for me, if you're on the feed-in tariff, I don't think it makes sense to look at Octopus Flux, because even if you don't export anything and you use it all, you still get paid for deemed export. So I think this only really makes sense if either you've got a massive amount of battery storage that you may then choose to sell back, and you are on the SEG, so you don't have the feed-in tariff, you are only getting paid for what you export. So that's my opinion. If you're on the feed-in tariff, stay on the feed-in tariff. If you're on SEG, then you might want to consider Flux. Now, the other thing to think about here, though, also is, again, I'm comparing this to Octopus Go, that obviously the off-peak rates are higher for charging than they are with Go, and the fact that obviously it's a slightly smaller window to charge up your electric vehicle and charge your battery up as well. So I'm kind of on the fence really at the moment in terms of Octopus Flux, because I think that while it is good that this is being introduced, it's going to cost you around, currently I think about, at least 5 pence per kilowatt hour extra off peak to charge your electric vehicles and power up your batteries. And then obviously when you export it, I don't think it offsets, because you're only kind of getting a few pence more. So yeah, it's difficult. I haven't done all the numbers. I'd be interested to know from you who are watching it if anyone's gone on to Octopus Flux. I do need to sit down and look at the numbers for the future, because obviously when I do get solar again, I won't be on FiT. So this might be something that is worth considering, just for the small amount that I may export in the future, even though it will be a smaller array. So while I do think that Octopus Flux is a good tariff and something to look into, I think that definitely if you don't have an electric vehicle, it's probably going to make sense to go with Octopus Flux and get paid, was it like just over 4 times per kilowatt hour than what you're probably getting paid on your SEG deal. But if you have an electric vehicle, I think you probably need to sit down, do more of the numbers, and compare something like the Octopus Go tariff, where you have that 4 hours cheaper rate versus still a cheaper rate with Flux, but not as cheap. So yeah, let me know in the comments if this is something you're thinking about. Let me know if you think that more people should be offering something like this. Again, I think it's good, because if you haven't got an electric vehicle and you want to be able to charge your battery up and stuff, and you haven't been able to get on Go, now Flux gives you an option to have some form of off-peak charging. And most of the energy providers now have been asking to have proof that you have an electric vehicle before letting you onto those off-peak tariffs. So this is a step in the right direction. And the rates aren't too bad for export. I think it's a good place to start. And like I said, better than the standard SEG, but I still think there might be some maneuvering room in the future depending on how successful it is. So thanks as always for watching. I hope this video was helpful, especially if you weren't aware of this tariff before and you were thinking of switching from SEG or something, or you're trying to quantify how solar and battery storage might help your return on investment. And the only other thing I will just mention that I do think is worth keeping in mind is obviously your battery, it has a certain lifetime on it. Now, based on who you buy it from, you're either going to have typically in best case, a 10-year warranty with unlimited charging cycles, or you may have a warranty that's limited to a certain amount of charging cycles. So again, if you are helping offset energy on the grid and obviously getting paid for it, you are impacting potentially the life of your battery in terms of you're putting it through more charge cycles than you would done if you're just using it to power your home versus offsetting, selling some of that back to the grid. So I don't really know right now off the top of my head how you'd quantify that and build it into your calculations, but it is something I think that you should consider before thinking, yay, I can get massive battery storage and deplete it all, and that will get me paid back faster. It will get you paid back faster, but maybe the battery won't last quite as long. There probably is a simple way of working that out, actually, if you just think about the size of your battery. If you'd only bought them just for getting payback for export, so if you look at exporting during those peak rates when you can get about 36.5 pence, so if you've got a 9.5 kilowatt battery that you bought just for this purpose, multiply that by the 36.5 pence per kilowatt over a period of time, what would be the payback for the battery. Maybe it does make sense. Those are numbers I've not yet done, but I will probably think about them as I start to think about adding to the Tesla battery storage. Probably going to get with Give Energy or maybe a Pylon Tech kind of self-build kind of setup. But I'm wittering now, so before I witter on forever about things that you're interested in, I'll close the video now. Thanks very much for watching as always. Please like this video if you have done. It really helps me and the YouTube channel get more people aware of the Spectrum Geeks channel. Take care of yourself and till the next video. Goodbye for now.